Kuf Chav Beis, Mitzvah Eidus, the Mitzvah of Testimony. And as always, we want to thank our partners in disseminating this year to many, many people over the web, TorahAnytime.com. Thank them for their efforts and wish them the greatest Hatzlacha in spreading Torah of many, many Magid Shir from all over the area. And as always, lately, I want to dedicate tonight's Shir to the Divrei Torah from tonight's class to the Refuah Shleima of Soya Chevet Bas Chana Masha and of Avraham Chaim Ben Chasha. Okay, the Mitzvah of Eidus, just a brief synopsis since some of you were not here last week. We learned in the Sefer Chinuch that the Chinuch Shita is that in all manner of testimony, if you know something, say something. There's a mitzvah asay in the Torah, there's a positive commandment in the Torah, that if you know testimony, whether it be about somebody having transgressed a garden variety, as I like to call it, lav, a negative commandment of the Torah, for which the punishment will be corporal. A lav sheyesh by Mises Bezdin, something that carries with a capital punishment, or the most common application of the mitzvah of recounting testimony in a civil case. When one of the litigants in a civil case comes to you and says, I want you to testify on my behalf. All right? Somebody's trying to frame me. I don't know. I'm the defendant in the case. Somebody says I owe the money. You know the truth. I don't owe the money. You can offer exculpatory testimony. And you fail to do so. Or on the contrary, the plaintiff asks that you come and testify on his behalf. You were there. Reuven says to the potential item, you fellows were there when I lent Shimon $1,000. Please come to court and testify on my behalf, if not on my behalf. Otherwise, he's going to be holding my property illegally. So in all of those permutations, there's a mitzvah, there's a positive command in the Torah to come to court and to testify to what you know. And if you fail to do so, then you will mevatel a mitzvah asay min haTorah. Right? I ended this year with a question last week, and it really is in the Sefer HaChinuch itself, and we're going to take a look at it inside. But just to refresh our memory, I want to read the pertinent text again inside. We're going to do paragraph 2 on page 1. For those of you who aren't present here tonight, who are going to be observing this year on TorahAnytime.com, this is Mitzvah Kuf Chav Beis 122, and in the Minchat Yerushalayim edition of Minchat Chinuch, it's the second volume, page Chav Daled. We're starting off. Okay, so paragraph 2. There is a difference vis-a-vis this mitzvah and the failure to fulfill it. When you're talking about dinim mamnis, civil law, property law, and other prohibitions of the Torah. When it comes to dinim mamnis, you don't have to volunteer your testimony. If one of the litigants or the court subpoena you, I don't know if it's subpoena, I'm using what we call shem mushal. I'm borrowing a concept. I know that in American jurisprudence, you can be subpoenaed to testify. All right? I don't know if it has to be something so official. I think a verbal hazmana, a verbal invitation of one of the litigants is quite sufficient. All right? Somebody has a stake in this din Torah, in this suit, and asks you to come testify on their behalf. So that's enough to be the scenario in which you would be over on this mitzvah essay. On page 1, Leslie, paragraph 2, in the middle of the paragraph. But when it comes to capital cases or testimony about other prohibitions of the Torah, for example, you saw somebody transgressing, you saw somebody eat pork. You saw somebody shave their face with a razor. You saw somebody put on shatnez, put on a wool linen combination. V'chein be'edus nefashos, or in capital cases, for example, you saw A kill B. O be'edus makos, or in testimony about assault, about hitting, striking somebody. You saw Moshe not kill Aaron, but you saw Moshe strike Aaron. Right? In all those cases, here there's no subpoena. Okay, it's the people against, it's God against, if you will. Okay, this isn't Reuven being pitted against Shimon. There are no litigants over here. Nobody has got to invite to demand you to come to court and bear witness and provide your testimony. The Torah is commanding you to do so with this pasuk that we started with. So, in all these cases, a person has to come on his own and testify before the courts in order to exterminate the evil in society, and or to separate people from something that is forbidden to them.
What if he knows he's a korev, for example, and he won't be accepted, so he doesn't have to come forward then, right?
Pardon me?
Let's say that he's a korev to the situation. He's not qualified as a witness.
Excellent question. Did everyone understand it? There are certain people who are disqualified from bearing witness, from testifying in court. Okay? For example, if you're related to one of the principals. Okay? You saw Moshe kill Aaron, you happen to be Aaron's brother, or you happen to be Moshe's first cousin. Okay? Would you have to testify in that case? Okay, so before I tell you what the Sefer Chinuch, what the Minchat Chinuch has to say about that, let me ask the rest of you here tonight. What do you think logically would be the din in that case?
No.
If you what?
You'd be biased already.
I'm not talking about the reason for the disqualification. I'm saying to qualify or disqualify witnesses is the business of the court. But in terms of your civil duty that we just described here, your Torah theocracy, civil duty, all right, to come forward when you know testimony. Do you have to come forward in such a case?
Yes.
You say yes.
I say no.
You say no.
Turn you away.
Well,
You can
Why do you have to engage in exercise and futility?
That's right.
Why do you have to offer testimony if it's not going to be accepted anyway? You agree with that, Leslie?
I don't know. I'm thinking that if the reason is Kedei Levar Hara, because it's possible, and since I wasn't here last week, I don't know if testimony by one person is going to be enough. If anybody's not going to help, you can't.
We're not talking right now about the controversy of one aid versus two aid. We're talking about, let's say there are two aidim, but one of them happens to be a Karev apostle. One of them knows he's related to the principals, or he's otherwise disqualified from testimony. On that individual, does he have this mitzvah to come forward, and is he nullifying the mitzvah if he fails to come forward?
I think he still has the mitzvah to come forward, Kedei Levar Hara, and then let the court decide. I'm sorry, you're apostle or something. So I'm thinking that he should come forward.
What's your definition of bihur hara? How is the guy being mavar hara? Is telling lashon hara bihur hara, or is Bezdin punishing evildoers bihur hara?
Lashon hara.
What?
Lashon hara is not maybe for a case like this. Lashon hara is when you just speak in lashon. If there's a toelis.
What is the toelis?
Toelis is that it's publicized, and everyone should know. When you say via Torah, this kind of thing shouldn't be done. It's isurim shouldn't be done.
Okay, I hear you, Svar, but as you said, missing last week that's put you a little bit of a disadvantage. Ed, you want to say anything?
Well, he probably, if he is related, you think?
Yeah.
I guess he should come. I guess he could come forward, but I think the Dinim would probably say, well, you know,
The Dayanim would say. Not probably, they would say a relative.
You know,
A relative is a disqualification.
Probably you're
So you're saying it's optional? He could come forward.
well, maybe
Yeah.
he should, but the court will say.
Fine. So here's the question. Okay. Again, we're starting the Sefer Chinuch and the commentator Minchat Chinuch. This is first and foremost a book about mitzvahs. When they apply, where they apply, to whom they apply, and so on. Okay. Does the mitzvah apply? I mean, to put a finer point on it. Okay. We have a mitzvah to put on tefillin every day. If I skip a day, if I don't put on tefillin, and there are no extenuating circumstances, that's what we call a sin of omission. You mevatel a mitzvah. You nullify the positive commandment. Would the close relative nullify this positive commandment that said testimony if he fails to come forward? Yes or no?
Probably yes.
You say yes. Okay, so you agree with Leslie, you say no. Let's start this for a minute.
I'm just adding that it says, because the Pasuk said, Lo yagib b'nasav or no.
Right.
So he has an obligation, even though he realizes he might be puzzled.
Okay, hold off on this. We're going to come back to this a little later. In the meantime, I want to zero in on the categories that the Sefer Chinuch categorized over here. Okay, basically we have 4 categories. The first paragraph, which we did not reread tonight, he talks about the mitzvah to say edus in monetary/civil cases. Then he talks about averis, corporal punishment averis. Then he talks about what we call din nefashos, capital offenses, and he talks about assault and battery cases. Okay, so now I want you to skip forward to page 3, and we're going to read something in the Minchat Chinuch. It's the very last paragraph, the one I've numbered 26. Yeah? Page 3 in my handout, page Chavav in the Machon Yerushalayim, Minchat Chinuch. Okay, paragraph 26, or Ois Yud Aleph in the Machon Yerushalayim reads as follows: This that the author wrote at the beginning of this mitzvah. Or in case of assault, where A struck B. Not he killed him, he struck him, he hit him. Okay? Moshe beats Aaron. Doesn't kill Aaron, he beats him up. That's what we call, in American jurisprudence, cases of assault and battery. In all those cases, you chayiv to come forward, and again, the way he made the chiluk, the difference, he differentiated between civil cases and these latter 3 categories. In civil cases, somebody's got to invite you / subpoena you to testify, and these you're supposed to come forward on your own. Any idea hakavana? I don't know what he's talking about. I don't grasp his meaning. In the last category, and what he terms assault and battery cases. If the assault resulted in an injury which bears monetary compensation of the coin that we call a pruta or more, then that's an imaminus. What do I care if Reuven is owed money by Shimon? Let's say Shimon owes Reuven, and so Reuven claims $1,000. What do I care if the reason Reuven owes Shimon owes Reuven $1,000 is because he borrowed $1,000 from Reuven and has failed to pay back? Or because he hired Reuven to do a job. He was contracted to do a job and they fixed the price at $1,000 and he's failed to pay him his wages. Yeah? Or if Shimon assaulted Reuven to the tune of $1,000. The aggregate, the Gemara in Achayvel, there's a parak in Bava Kama that goes through various monetary obligations that one incurs when they assault another. There are 5 altogether: nezek, tsar, ripu, shevetz, and baishas. Damages, pain inflicted, doctor's bills, healing bills, loss of wages, and humiliation. All right? So, if the aggregate of that is $1,000, how is it qualitatively any different than if I owe the guy $1,000 because I borrowed from him? And it doesn't have to be worth $1,000. It can be worth as little as a shava pruta. If all 5 of those factors in the aggregate equal a shava pruta, you've got yourself a civil case. How is that a new category? Let's read on. The ihakash ain't shava pruta. If it's an assault where everything together isn't the shava pruta, you sneak up behind the guy and you flick him on his earlobe, something like that. There's no bruise, there's no doctor bills. He's going back to work tomorrow. Okay, maybe there would have been a little bit of humiliation, except you did it in a dark room where nobody else saw, just between the two of you. Okay, you're not allowed to do it. You're not allowed to strike a person even under circumstances like that. You know what the din is in a case like that? The flicker, will get flogged. Try saying that 5 times. The flicker will get flogged. The flicker will get flogged. Okay. If the hakah of the assault altogether doesn't add up to a shava pruta, havalei dine malchus. then it's a case. Then it's qualitatively no different than if you saw somebody eat a piece of pork or put on a wool linen combination. The din is in that case malchus. It's not there in the Torah. It's a lav. Okay. It says ubeged shatnez tzema pishni yachtav lo yalo elecha. That's the pasuk to prohibit shatnez. Over here it says lo yosef lahakais aleilav pen yosef aleilav makarabba. They're both lavim in the Torah. They're both negative commandments of the Torah. All right. The penalty for an active commission, negative commandment for the Torah is malchus, is corporal punishment. Again, you already categorized that category. It's not a new category. Assault cases are one or the other. They're either a civil case or they're a criminal case. And we already know the din by a civil and a criminal case. You understand the question? Is that question clear or not? Okay? He doesn't understand how assault became a category unto itself. It's got to fit neatly into one of the two categories that have already been enumerated. So, the answer of the Minchas Chinuch is as follows, and I want to offer maybe an alternative answer. He really doesn't have much of an answer. He starts playing with the text. V'nira diyitu loshenhu. Is there somehow or another some copyist, some transcriber, because remember, the Sefer Chinuch is a sefer of a fairly ancient provenance. Okay, and I'm sure the earliest editions were out before there was movable type. So you had the author's manuscript, and then starting with the original author's manuscript, you had professional scribes who copyists, and that's how early works of literature, both secular and sacred, that's how they got published. That's how they got disseminated. So it's saying somebody inserted an extra phrase over here, somewhere along the line. V'nira diyitu loshenhu. There's something superfluous. There's something extra in the text. V'tzarech leimer kegayin dinei makis. Okay? Not be'edus makis shehika es chavere, but kegayin dinei makis. Hainu chayve lavim dechayve malchus. He's not saying a new category. He's just explicating what he meant before and contrasting it with capital cases. That's all. Not that what the person you're testifying did was a makkah, was a striking, but whatever they did, the punishment that the court is going to give is a striking. What we call alternatively flogging, whipping, lashes, and a lot of different ways. The Hebrew terminology is malchus. The criminal, the avar, and the sinner gets malchus. Okay? That's his answer. Okay. I want to offer a different shot. I was thinking about this question all week. Baruch Hashem, I was mechavan to this question as soon as I read the Chinuch, long before I saw the question asked by the Minchas Chinuch. I want to offer possibly a different question, solution to the question than what we just read in the Minchas Chinuch. Let me ask you this. Okay? The Chinuch makes very clear that in civil cases, in monetary cases, this mitzvah to say what you know, to come forward to the court and relate testimony, does not come into play unless you were invited to do so. Okay? Reuven lent Shimon $1,000. Moshe and Aaron saw this. Okay? Unless Reuven comes to Moshe and Aaron and says, fellas, yeah, you can win me $1,000, you must come to court. Right? If Reuven doesn't bother to do that, there's no mitzvah on Moshe and Aaron to volunteer their knowledge, to volunteer what they know. All right? The other way around, maybe Moshe and Aaron were there when Reuven lent the money. They were also there when Aaron paid back the debt. And now Reuven is trying to frame Aaron. He's trying to get a double payment. And Aaron comes to, I'm all confused. Reuven and Shimon are litigants. Moshe and Aaron are the potential item. Shimon, the borrower, not the lender, comes to Moshe and Aaron and says, fellas, you saw me pay back. It saved me $1,000. Come to court. But absent that, I'm just giving a loan as the simplest garden variety example, but this is true in any kind of a lawsuit. It could be the simplest lawsuit, it could be the most complex lawsuit. Unless one of the litigants involved comes to the item and says, I want you to testify, either to indict my opponent or to exonerate me, then the mitzvah doesn't come into play. You want to go l'fnim mishur sadin, you want to do above and beyond what the law demands because you want to see justice done, that's fine. And maybe it will be an opportunistic mitzvah. Mitzvah kiyum is if you come to court and you tell the truth. All right? But the obligatory mitzvah that you must testify what you know, in civil cases only applies when you're invited to testify. In all other cases, nobody has to invite you. Okay? You know something, it requires testimony in court, come forward and provide it. What would be in a case where for the Eidim themselves, for the witnesses themselves who saw something, okay, they're not scholarly enough, they don't know the law, right? Is this criminal or is this civil? Right? Recent immigrants from an Islamic country, they're used to Sharia law, okay? And they know in their country a ganef gets his hand cut off. Right? Talk about corporal punishment. A ganef gets maimed. Right? Now they move to Israel, and they see a pickpocket. They're in Machne Yehuda Shuk, and they see a guy lift a wallet out of somebody else's back pocket. Okay? Well, should we go to court? Sure. And then right away the person knows it's Israel. Oh, I see the ganef. Did anyone hear it? You know? Is this a civil case or is this a criminal case? If it's a criminal case, if the pickpocket is going to get his hand lopped off, I don't need anyone to invite me to come to court. All right? I got to do it because it's to v'yarta rami kebera. Whatever psukim. The psukim are not important. The halakha categories. All right? If it's a criminal case, I have to step forward uninvited. If it's a civil case, I don't. Okay, so I just gave you a semi-ridiculous scenario that's based on ignorance. Okay? But I don't need that ridiculous scenario. I have my scenario right here. Okay? If I see somebody flick somebody else on the ear, all right, do I know how much that's worth in a court of law? Do I abstractly? I'm talking and learning with somebody. I go to my local Rav and say, listen, Rabbi, yeah, if we'd still be living in temple times, yeah, and we'd have a fully functional, fully up and running court system, I'm interested to know, what does the Torah say about Reuven when Reuven flicks Shimon on the earlobe? Well, the rabbi, there's a lot of variables. Was there bruising? Was there a black and blue mark? All right? Did he have to take any Tylenols, to reduce the pain? Was it in public? Was it humiliation? Okay? Was it, and so on and so forth. All right? So in other words, I don't know myself. Yeah? Is this civil or is this criminal? Is this a shava pruta or is it a shava? I just know one thing. It was an assault case. Yeah? I saw Reuven assault Shimon. Not every assault case is civil. Some assault cases are criminal. So perhaps the Sefer Chinuch had to speak out a new category, a hakah, a case of hakah, right? Because it doesn't fit neatly into the other categories I just described. There's a difference between the categories. I described the category of testimony in civil cases. There you need to be subpoenaed. That's on the one hand. On the other hand, I described the categories of criminal/capital cases where you have to volunteer and come forward on your own. But in the case of hakah, right, maybe I shouldn't come forward till the nachbal, till the one who was assaulted, tells me to come forward. Asks me to come forward. It's a civil case, isn't it? Says the no. You come forward. I'm going to use English terminology, but it's really a halakha category. Right? Err on the side of caution. Sveka daraisa l'chumer. You have a suffix if you're mechuyev in this mitzvah. Right? A guy puts on a pair of tefillin in the morning. Right? Somebody points out, hey, you know something? I noticed your ritzuas, they need blackening. Apostles' tefillin. If your ritzuas, the straps, they're attached to your tefillin, they're not completely black, your tefillin are not kosher. All right? He says, gee, that's funny. I'm OCD. I'm in the habit, every time I put my tefillin away, every time I wrap up my tefillin after davening in the morning, I always check for them for blackness, and they were perfectly black yesterday. All right? So the question is, when did they lose their blackness? When did they get this white spot on them? All right? As I was taking them out of the bag, maybe on the zipper, maybe it got scraped off. Or maybe as I was davening today, right? I passed by something with rough edges, and that's what invalidated my tefillin. That's what made the ritzuas not completely black. So he goes to the Rabbi and says, what should I do, Rabbi? I don't know when. So again, I mean, I'm oversimplifying the case because there may be something called a chazaka that would rule on this case. But I'll say, you want to know something? Sveka daraisa l'churma. Tefillin b'zman hazeh is still a mitzvah asay daraisa. You're not sure if you fulfilled the mitzvah this morning. It is possible that your tefillin were invalid from the moment you put them on this morning. Borrow another guy's kosher pair of tefillin and put them on for a few seconds. You want to be a tzaddik, laying Kriya Shema, say the 4 parshas of the tefillin with your tefillin on. All right? You're not sure if you fulfilled the mitzvah, do it over. All right? Same thing over here. Is this the kind of testimony where I've got to be invited to testify, otherwise the mitzvah doesn't apply? Or is it the type of testimony where, absent anyone inviting me, I still should be coming forward and testifying? Says the Sefer HaChinuch, Sveka daraisa l'churma. In a case of hakah, we're not expecting you to be an expert. You don't know slave market devaluation, and you don't know how to assess humiliation. You don't know anything. You saw an assault case, right? It's possible that it's criminal and not civil. It's possible that the aggregate of everything involved will not add up to a shava pruta. Nobody has to invite you. It's a suffix. If this mitzvah is incumbent upon you, go ahead and fulfill the mitzvah. Go do it. Maybe. I don't know. I'm offering, it's an original attempt to solve the problem.
Does the Torah want Big Brother to be watching over every little thing?
No, of course not. Of course it's a matter of conscience. But we'll learn that. You're from a yid. You want to observe the laws of the Torah? You now know. You now are more savvy than you were 2 weeks ago. You know that when you know something, and it's not a civil case, you've got to come forward. Now it's not so simple, because again, does this mitzvah still apply where the court isn't going to be able to act on your testimony anyway? On the contrary, the only cases pretty much we have left today are civil cases. We don't have capital cases. We don't have criminal cases at all. So, okay, but at least in theory, you know what a Jew living when Judaism is up and running and functioning normally, this is what you're supposed to do.
There's another concept: keep yourself away from speakers. So if you have a suffix, to avoid a suffix, do what you have to do to get out of a suffix.
How's that different? That's the same thing I just said,
I'm
isn't
not
it?
saying it's the eraser. I'm just saying stam.
That's not true. Svek d'Rabbanan l'kula. If the mitzvah of Haggadah say this would be a mitzvah d'Rabbanan, in the case I just said, then you could err.
I want to always keep out of a suffix, so I'll go and do it.
Du bist a frumak, and he's talking halacha. He's trying to articulate when the mitzvah does and does not apply. Look, it's a stretch. What I'm reading, I mean, he should be saying all this. He should say Mishum Svek d'Rabbanan. The kasha is a lot better than my teretz, but at least in my teretz, I'm not resorting to textual emendations, which is always the court of last resort. Okay, now I just want to say right now, because you missed last week, and I don't want to dwell on this a lot because there's a wealth of very interesting information I want to get to tonight, and we may not even get back into the Minchas Chinuch tonight. The Chinuch itself is chock full of very interesting data tonight. But you missed last week, so let me just tell you, okay? He's right, you're wrong. Absolutely not. There is absolutely no application of this mitzvah if there's no efficacy to the edus. Okay? In other words, in an edus where you need 2 edim, yeah, and you're an ed echad, then the din is this mitzvah does not apply. Right? As a matter of fact, in dinei iser, yeah, in cases where you're talking about Isser v'heta, you're not talking about dinei mamonos. So we learned the famous Gemara last week that Zigud came to Rav Papa's bezdin, I think it was, and he was made. He saw Tuvia do a dvar erva. They caught Tuvia in a sexual indiscretion. Yeah. So Rav Papa gave Zigud malchus, and Zigud said, "Well, what kind of miscarriage of justice is this? Tuvia chatav Zigud mangid. Tuvia is the guy who did the avera, and I'm the one getting the malchus, right?" So this is in the Kavarta, Allah say, L'chrachel ba'amecha. It's a plea of the Gemara, it's a lav shei b'maisa. He said, yeah, you are over on Lashon Hara. That's not biur hara. Sullying somebody's reputation, yeah, where the courts are not going to act upon it anyway, is not biur hara, it's the creation of hara. It's what we call Lashon Hara. if your edus is not going to accomplish anything, right? Not only does this mitzvah not apply, but in criminal cases an avera applies. Right? So again, I don't know if it's an exact corollary, but it would seem to me that what you're saying is correct. He started the class with a question. What would happen if somebody is a karev, somebody's a relative to somebody that you have to say this about? Does this mitzvah still apply? So I think not. We learned last week that, for example, where you need two eidim and you know you're an eid achad, the mitzvah doesn't apply. Sometimes an avera applies. So I think it's the same thing. If you're a puzzle, yeah, and the testimony is not going to stand anyway because you don't have the critical mass of two eidim, so how could there be a mitzvah on you? And interesting enough, once there's no mitzvah on you, even though the other guy may not be a relative, now there's no mitzvah on him either. Right?
Hypothetically,
Yeah.
if I'm an Eid Echad,
Right.
but I don't know, there might be someone else. Does it work or does it not? Do I come?
Yeah, we covered this last week too. I don't, I'll talk to you after the shiur if you're interested. But let's go on to some things in the chinuch itself. Okay, I want to do back on page 1 again of your handout, or page Chaf Daled in Machon Yerushalayim. I'm sorry, page 2 of the handout. I want to start with the paragraph I numbered number 5. There's some interesting things in 4.2. If we have time, we'll come back to it. I'm not going in order here. Paragraph number 5. Okay? Bezdin does not prevent itself from gathering testimony because of love or hatred. Meaning, I love the accused. I hate the accused. Okay? In cases of dayanim, that's what we call a conflict of interest, an appearance of impropriety. How are you able to sit in judgment on somebody? You're not blood relations, but you're very good friends. Or on the contrary, okay, the judge sitting on the bench is a Hatfield, and the accused is a McCoy.